Hi, my name is Dave Valenticonis, North American Technical Services Manager at the Siemon Company. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the third episode of our corporate podcast, Network Connections, the podcast about ICT networks presented by Siemon. Today on our show, I'm pleased to be joined by none other than Peter Thickett, a man that can only be described as a hybrid of a Renaissance man and a hipster Brit. So those are my words, not his or probably anybody else's. How are you today, Pete?
I don't even know what that means. I'm gonna have to Google Renaissance now. I'm doing very well today. Coping with the change in our working structure that I think we're feeling across the globe at the moment. So doing pretty good. Thanks for asking.
Well, that's great. Well, to start, Pete, let's let the people get to know you a little bit better before we jump into our more industry related questions. So let's start off with something simple. How long have you worked for the Siemon Company?
So I actually started working at the Siemon Company. It was like the Christmas of 2007, start of 2008. So it's been getting on for 12 years now, right? Is that what that is? Yeah. So it's so it's been a long time.
Yeah, it
doesn't feel like it has. It's flown by, if I'm honest.
And it has. You've done a number of roles at the company, and I'm sure it's gone by quickly.
So I graduated from my engineering degree right before starting at the company, and so I started off in an engineering role and spent a lot of time, obviously, working with you on a lot of cabinet projects, a lot of racks and cable management, some ZMAX as well. That was an exciting product to work on. So I kind of dipped my toes into a lot of the different product lines over the years, and then I think it was 2016 I moved into product management, and that's the role I currently have. So
brilliant. Okay, yep, that is fair. Pretty diverse actually, by compared to many people, considering the range of responsibilities and things you've seen. Before you accepted the job at Siemon, what was, you mentioned university, kind of where'd you come from, and what, more importantly, what made you want to come work for Siemon?
Well, so it's kind of a long story, but so I obviously I grew up in England. I went to university in England, and it really started from really my father's company. So he had worked in the telecommunications industry for most of his career, and he ran a company that was effectively like a CI/VAR out of the UK, and ended up working quite closely with Carl at the early 90s, and effectively it was one of the first, if not the first, reseller of Siemon company cabling in Europe. I've been told these stories so many times, but to be honest, I revert back to being a teenager when my dad talks about these sorts of things, and I choose to ignore him. So it's quite embarrassing that I don't know more details about this stuff. But basically, what happened was, obviously I was quite familiar with my father's industry and what he was doing, and then when I was at university, there were certain projects that I would be working on where we would ask to kind of proactively seek outside funding to help us, and mainly because we were lucky enough, it was an engineering degree, and there was a lot of things we did with motor racing, and it's a bad look for an educational establishment to be spending a lot of money on sending their students to go race cars against each other. So so where we can, we'd seek funding, and so I'd use whatever contacts I could to try to find sponsorship and things like that for our team, and a part of our engineering school that ran that effort. And one of the people that I called on was the Siemon company, and from there on, I kind of kept in contact, and when I graduated, I had a choice. I could stay in the UK, and there was some attractive things I could try to do there, or I could take a bit of a leap, move to a different country, and have a bit of an adventure. And then that's because I'm still having that adventure now, it looks like.
That's true. And actually that'll pop up. We have some other questions kind of talking about a little bit about your background and history, especially in the lightning round. So be prepared there. But you mentioned in 2016 you started out as you transitioned to product manager. So what segments of the business do you support in the product management role?
Well, actually, so funnily enough, I had a conversation with someone about this today, and I rattled off a few things, and they said, so basically everything that isn't copper or fiber. And
That's
I was
it.
like, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, why not? Let's go with that.
Right.
But basically, in short, like technically, my title is data center product management, data center systems. But I've kind of inherited across that, the last few years, our power distribution units, so rack PDUs, pre-configured cabinets, pre-configured solutions generally, basically, racks and cable management, intelligent patching products, things like that. So basically, it's still simpler just to say anything that isn't copper and fiber at this point.
It is. It's a great way to capture the people who don't know the answer to that one. If it doesn't fall under column A or B, it falls to you under column C, and that's
Yeah,
that's pretty diverse, right? So, as part of this, you've obviously spent a lot of time, addressing infrastructure issues in the data center, right?
yeah.
That's data center product line. So, what was the most? What would you say was the most challenging data center problem that you or your team may have faced from a product design perspective?
Well, I actually think so. I mean, from a product design point of view, um, I would say it goes back to. I mean, you'd remember a lot of this stuff, but it's the side venting Cisco switches. Like
Yeah,
I think
remember
about this,
those?
and it's just not an easy solution to try to find. Yeah, when you've got. Do you remember back? I don't believe they do this anymore, but there was rules of thumb you had to kind of go by to try to be certified to provide a space that was going to be
Yep. Yep.
able for a Cisco switch to work the way it should.
Hmm.
And yeah, I remember plenty of times where me, you, and Lyle would sit there with like the schematics of our cabinet and go, "How do we make space where there is none?" Or like,
Yeah.
how are we supposed to solution this with the airflow requirements while still trying to maintain something that provides a differentiator for our customers in terms of like best in class cable management, things like that. The sort of things we would try to have as a running theme of our cabinet products. And yeah, that was, I wouldn't say it was a wouldn't say it was a difficult challenge or not a fun challenge, but it was definitely something that was not your typical thing you're trying to solution. But
Sure.
other than that, there were some other things that kind of stood out as being things that I kind of proudly look at from an engineering point of view and think, that was a fun thing I worked on. That was something that I'm proud of. And things like, and this might sound really, really minuscule, but on the ZMAX panels, and I forgive anyone listening to this, they go, what are these guys talking about? But the label holders, the
Oh,
way that
yeah.
the label holders latch
Yep.
into the panel, I remember, and this wasn't long after I started the company. I was like two years in, maybe less than that actually, because ZMAX wasn't that long after I started, and it was me and Jim Fry. You remember Jim, right?
Yep. Remember Jim?
Yeah, yeah,
Brilliant engineer as well.
and between the two of us, we came up with the most bizarre latch I've ever seen to connect this label holder to the front of a ZMAX panel, where we basically is no space, and you're trying to snap a plastic piece between one plastic edge and a sheet metal edge. The tolerances that go into that are wacky anyway, because you've got two different components, two different material types, all interfacing. Then you're inserting a third one in the mix. But it's actually, if I try and create a word picture for this, it's like if you look at the latch, it's like a banana shape, and the whole point of it is flattens out as it goes through the slot, like the letterbox, and it droops back down into this kind of curved banana shape again, and it latches in. I do believe I've never seen a latch like that before, and that was me and Jim just throwing the craziest ideas we could at trying to find a solution to that.
I will give you credit. It really is an extremely elegant solution because it's mechanically fastened, but no use of adhesive. There wasn't any
Yeah.
real estate, and it really did work. It really did work brilliantly. And it's a nice product. It's a great thing to be a part of. A great story to tell that you were part of the development of that, working with Jim on there.
Well,
That really
and
was
can I
a
add
really nice
one more
product
thing
set.
too? Even on that mold, we like the way we polished it and curved the front face of the label holder meant that it actually kind of magnifies the label. And the funny thing is, I guarantee you, no one other than like maybe 3 or 4 of us at the company looked at that product and think, "Oh, cool label holder."
I know there's plenty of secrets, like you said. You could talk about these. There's so much that goes in behind the things that people see every day. And good engineering work means people don't even think twice about it. They use it, and that's kind of evidence of a really nice design for that. So,
And do you
yeah,
remember
great work on both of those. And there's going to be some hard ones, I'm sure, in the future that your engineering perspective will still allow you to be a part of, even though you're at kind of product manager level. But if you look ahead to data center technology or design trends that are out on the horizon, out there a little bit, what do you think end user companies should keep their eyes on in terms of future proofing, their infrastructures and from a data center technology perspective?
Well, I think, I mean, it's to really for people running data centers today. I think it's more about future proofing their mindset rather than necessarily their infrastructure. Yeah, I think there's a lot of movement to the cloud, obviously, and there's a lot of a lot of major players on the cloud side, and I think there's a requirement not to be so open-minded about it that you're just going to jump in at the deep end and be like, okay, I'm not going to mention any names, but like, there's a few parties out there that people could go to right off the bat, and they could move all of their stuff out of their own premises and go full cloud provided.
Mhm.
And there are challenges there. There's a lot of benefits, obviously, but there are an awful lot of risks too. And I think what we're seeing from a market trend point of view is that there's an awful lot of partners out there, like value added partners, that as a data center owner operator, there's just so much potential for them to be able to really create their own data center solution that does what their organization's needs are, meets all their compliance goals, eliminates a lot of risk and cost, that are specialized to the verticals they operate in. It doesn't require them to have to go, fully to the cloud, like the we refer to as kind of like the hyperscale side, and really deal with a lot more kind of diverse. We're talking about like the MSP space basically, but
Yeah,
and
sure.
taking more of a hybrid approach. I know it's not necessarily about specifically the infrastructure itself, but it's all kind of, I mean, it's all about how they're dealing with their data at the end of the day. And I just think it's such a strange time that we're in for a lot of reasons. And it's so quick to change. And as a data center operator, if you've got your own premises, your own assets, and your own applications running on that, that's really the same as what you're going to have if you move everything to fully to the cloud. It's just you're not physically there. If anything, you're slightly more isolated from what you can actually achieve. And then you've got some risks with things like transmission rates too. You don't really know what you're going to be paying at the end of the day when you start actually transmitting traffic back and forth. So I think there's some really elegant solutions out there that, again, especially once you take into account the compliance side of things, where this kind of slightly more hybrid approach, and going through really valued MSP partners can create a much better, well-rounded solution at the end of the day that still keeps costs under control.
That's actually a great point. Pete, doesn't have to be, this or that. You can work with partners that can talk a little bit and get the best of both worlds and a good, healthy mix for their customer. That's a great answer. That's absolutely some great insight there and a good recommendation. But would you answer that question the same way if you were advising a cloud or co-location data center provider?
I mean, it would be similar. Well, it's linked to my previous question. Let's put it that way. I mean, it's a difficult strategy for a data center operator to move totally to the cloud, and it's also, they're still managing a lot of their own equipment. There's still a lot of overheads they have to do when they're moving to a colo. And I'm sure colo providers out there understand this, and maybe the best value to the actual end user at the end of the day is to leverage more MSP usage. And in that, and in the discussions we've had with some of our colo partners, we're kind of under the impression that there's, right now there's like an 80-20 rule, let's put it, where 20% of that right now is kind of like the MSP side of the equation, and over the next 5 years or so, it's going to flip the other way. So I think it really comes down to, from their point of view, how are they viewing the landscape from a data center point of view, and how are they viewing the trends associated? And I'm assuming that they're going to start leveraging their relationships with MSPs more and targeting those clients more as being the real growth players. And ultimately, the more they can enable their MSP partners to grow, or even their end users to move more to MSP partners that they already work with, then they're not losing business, right? They're actually cultivating a different type of growth. They're still growing within their data centers, just in a different way. So I think there's, again, it's along the same theme, but it's just a different side of the equation, basically.
Sure. Okay, I get that, and it's interesting because it seems like these MSPs are really going to be at the heart of what we're going to see in data center spaces over the next few years. But so, all right, let's take a look at it a little bit. Let's say you're a cabling installer, and you've just been handed the physical layer design for a Greenfield Data Center project. What advice would you give them? What should they do first?
Well, obviously, it's a shameless plug, right? I'd call TSG.
There you go.
I'd talk to Barb Perot, and then if she tries to transfer me to anyone named Dave, I'd hang up and try again.
Well, there's only 3 days in the Barb, so there you
exactly.
go. Right? That's brilliant.
But no, I think ultimately, my advice in this situation, because I mean, especially on the fiber side, but even then, copper, same thing. There's a lot of things going on with high speed as well. There's just so many moving parts. There's so many trends that are coming along from a hardware point of view, and there's so much room for error in terms of specifying what type of cabling you can use. There's so many mines that you can step on basically here. And I mean, it is a shameless plug, but I do think that we offer some really fantastic differentiation when it comes to what your division actually can provide in TSG, and being able to assist with making sure that the right types of connectivity, whether it's copper, fiber, high speed, those sorts of things are chosen. And the value that's added there takes a lot of that risk away, and really provides a way to not just make it so that they're not going to miss-spec product into their data center, but they can make it easier for themselves, right? Because with things like trunks that are cut to length and things like that arrive basically ready to go, there's just so much option to streamline the process, and basically they can make the whole process a lot simpler, less risky, more cost effective at the end of the day, and provide a better solution to their end user. So TSG.
Shameless plug accepted. I'll buy you one of those higher end beers that you drink, no doubt, at some point when the pubs are back open again.
It is after 5 o'clock, I have to say. So this is
fair enough.
Adult beverages are allowed.
There you go. All right, last question before we maybe get into more of a lightning round. Most folks may not realize you started with Siemon as an engineer and that you have a master's in mechanical engineering. Your thesis was based around, I think, computational modeling, right? Do you think that background helped you more quickly assimilate to the CFD software you had been using to evaluate the thermal dynamics that occur in a data center, with the bypass air and containment systems?
I think I wouldn't say it made it easier, because that stuff is, I've got to say it's really difficult, right? So I can make it seem like I'm a genius. But no, I think it gave me
just through software, huh? That's brilliant.
It definitely gave me some respect for those pieces of software, because they're incredibly powerful. It doesn't matter whether or not you're doing something in with fluid dynamics or with finite element analysis for stress analysis. It's so easy, especially these days. I'm going to sound really old when I say this, but the kids these days, right? They could design a product to their software and press a button and everything looks great. But ultimately, it is kind of like that. You can run an analysis that you can make it look like everything's going to be great. It does, and then this is across the board from a computational analysis point of view. Mm-hmm. If your boundary conditions aren't set right, and we've talked quite at length about this sort of thing before, when you set up like the ideal data center from a CFD point of view, where you've just basically just
Mm-hmm.
there's no bypass there, and all of a sudden you're like, well, everything runs fine. Yeah, you can make that
Right.
you can make that solution look great if your boundary conditions aren't set correctly, if you're not assessing all of the losses properly, and you can be very misled. And this, obviously the same goes just like with a plastic latch, and you're analyzing it in in FEA. You can, if you put too simplistic data in, you're not properly assessing the way that the part is supposed to be fixtured, and the way that you're applying load or movement to it, or even the materials, right? If your materials aren't set right, there's just so many ways that you can create either error that makes it look way worse, or even worse than that, way too good for actually reality. And that's before you even get into like how refined meshes are and things like that all add to the complexity of it. I think so basically, in short, it basically just made me realize that you have to just be very careful about the results you get, double
Sure.
check them before you
Yep.
just start screaming from the rooftop that everything's going to be great, and just be very scrutinize what you've created, and try and do it a few different ways and see if you get the same number, basically, and then move forward.
Well, you did a great job of navigating them. I remember you telling me some stories on that. You had to figure a bunch of things out. I was so happy to have someone with your experience on the team that got to that conclusion, so that we were basically providing, good information from our customers, as accurate as could possibly be, all given conditions. But hey, you know what, Pete? Thanks for all of that insight. That's really a lot, and you really have been such a wonderful addition to the Siemon team. Um, no doubt. And I could ask a number of people at the company who would say the exact same thing. But before we wrap up, there are a number of coworkers that sent in some questions for you to answer, which I'm going to ask you in a little bit of a lightning round type of
I'm
format. Are
really
you okay
worried
with that?
about this, by the way. Like, this is the worst.
It's after 5 o'clock, so this is going to be fun, right? There's no right or wrong answer. These are just Pete Thicket answers. So, all right, here we go. First one: you were born and raised in England, not Australia, some people might have thought from your
Yep.
accent, but from the moment you got to the U.S., you bought a Jeep, you bought a 91 Z28 Camaro, and started racing stock cars at the local NASCAR track. Were you actually just trying to become the most stereotypical American you could possibly be?
I don't know. I honestly don't know what happened. Like, I was just living the dream. I don't know what came over me. I actually, the funny thing was, yeah, I had a mullet before that. Like, I should have kept that. It would have been perfect. Can you imagine how brilliant that would have looked to step out of my my awful Camaro, which I have to say is the slowest car I think I've ever driven, with adorned with a glorious mullet, and then break out an English accent. People would think I'd probably get beaten up. It would have been amazing.
I think the mullet spoke volumes. It just meant you were destined to come over here anyway, I guess, probably, if you thought about it.
I'm
Um,
trying so hard to grow a COVID mullet, but it's not happening as quickly as I'd hope it would. I need a
yeah,
few more weeks of quarantine.
yeah, it'll get there. I doubt. Just keep committed to it. No problems there. I know you've also participated with a couple other guys in an online virtual 24-hour Le Mans race. How'd you do?
Well, which one?
You maybe have done. What's the best you've done?
Um, I think the best was last summer's one. So yeah, about this time last year. Well, I don't think we got a very good finish. I think we were like maybe, I'd have to look back at my results. I think it was like seventh or eighth or something out of about, in our class, it's about 15 or 20 or something like that. But the main thing was that it's basically a lot of people enter these, right? So because you're only
Sure.
on track with about 40, there's actually normally 200-300 races going on at any one time. So no one actually gets like I mean, they do. There is like one tier that's like the highest that the pro guys do or whatever. But like, as far as us amateur people, you're really just focused on what's going on in your race. But across the entire, hundreds of races going on, somehow we got like in the top 10 for most overtakes. And I
That's
think this
good.
was because we we spent a lot of time having to have bits of our car repaired. so we kept losing positions. So basically, we kept going into the pits and having to repair for like a couple of minutes, going back out and having to get our position back. But it meant that it stacked our numbers, so it looked really good.
All right.
So
Hey,
I'd say that was
there's a
probably our
silver
best,
lining.
our best 24-hour event.
Yeah,
result.
brilliant. Well, it's like CFD. You're just looking at how you consider the outcome. In this case, we're going to take that silver lining. Say it was a good outcome. I like that.
Yeah.
Um, also, I know you're a lifelong New York Jets fan. Two-part question. How did that come to be, and
Oh,
how does
no.
that feel?
Oh, well, this is such a horrible story. I don't know. So, where? Oh no. So, when I first moved over here, I needed to figure out a way to find a football team that wasn't going to have people accuse me of just like glory supporting, basically.
Sure.
And
No bandwagon.
yeah, and the thing is, being in Connecticut, I've only got a few choices, right? It's either Jets, Giants, or Patriots, and I wasn't going to really go further afield than that because then it would really seem like I'm reaching. So I was thinking, maybe I can't just, I mean, also a coin flip's difficult with three, so so I was really trying to figure out a way that I could objectively find my sports team, and I remember from like a trip, like as a kid to the States, being bought it was like this like members only style jacket that was like a Patriots one, and I think I was about maybe 13 at the time or something like that, and I was like, brilliant. Patriots fan, and it happened to be right when Patriots are through their like longest unbeaten streak ever or something, and I was like, this is the best. I've got a way to say that I didn't choose this team. This team chose me, kind of thing, and they're good because I come from. I don't know if anyone knows this, but obviously England are not very good at soccer these days, so that's been a thorn in my side once it's 66.
Sure.
I'm an Aston Villa fan, so while just being promoted back into the Premiership, we're about to get relegated back to the division below it. So I'm very much used to having mediocre teams. So for once I had a successful team. So I actually was on the phone with my mother, and I was like, I'm actually pretty happy. Found my team for football, and the season's starting soon. And they're pretty good, and it's going to be great. And I explained the story to her, and she emailed me a picture, and I was like 6 years old wearing a Jets jersey. And I was like, no, my own plan came back to destroy me. So I had to switch to the Jets, and
That's
yeah, and so that was that. Yeah,
that's a great story, and we'll just close that one off with butt fumble and move on.
yeah, it's
Hey,
horrible feeling, and it doesn't
you,
look like it's going to get any better anytime soon either.
well, one thing I know is also you've been known to always be snacking on something at work or work when you're working remotely. So I've got to ask you, what's your favorite snack food that you either have here or something from back home in the UK?
Oh, my favorite snack. I can't. I mean, I'll upset everyone back home if I pick something from here, but
We'll pick one from each.
well, right. I mean, it changes all the time, Dave. These things. I'd say that right now, for some reason, my American candy obsession are Twizzlers. I don't know what it
Okay.
is about them. I can't get enough of them right now. And yeah, and I think it's also because I had this really good idea where we could do a marketing thing where we could shove a bunch of conductors into a Twizzler and make it seem like we had a tie-in with Twizzlers. That's why I don't have a marketing role.
If you want to go down the road in marketing, Dave Medeiros did suggest that all the cable kind of segmenters, dividers inside of cable jacket should be made of Twizzlers, so you can strip the cable jacket back, chew off the divider, and then terminate your conductors.
I mean, really,
So you can work with them on that.
there's a lot of scope to make a lot of stuff out of Twizzler material, and we have
Absolutely.
to do some fire rating work to figure out if there's any limitations there. But
Fair enough.
for the UK stuff, though, I think I'd have to go with Chewits. No one's gonna know what that is, but yeah, they're these little, they're like now and laters, but way better.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll just. Chances are most of the U.S. crowd may not know, but they're all going to Google it after they hear this. I'm sure. Now, also, I know you've been a bit of a world traveler. Either with your dad or since you've been a little bit older. I know you've got, I think, a brother in Australia. What's the favorite place you've been, and what's the top of your list for place you'd most like to go to next?
Oh, that's a good question. I do. I mean, my wife and I love going to the south of France. Like that. Yeah, I was lucky enough to kind of have enough a lot of vacations down there as a kid, and so despite the fact that I managed to resist learning anything other than how to order food and drink, but we do love it down there. There's a few places that we've been to together around the area, and there's a Formula One racetrack that's just around the corner as
well. No, what are the chances?
But yeah, I think the place we would like to go to next. I mean, we were planning on going to, because we were going to have our sales meeting in Thailand this year, and my wife was going to come along to that, and we're going to stay there for a little while longer. And that we got kind of disappointed that we didn't get to do that in the end, because of obviously the I don't know if you heard about the global pandemic thing that popped up. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that kind of did get me thinking though. If we could go anywhere, I would quite like to go to Tokyo. It's not the normal sort of place we've been to, and normally we'd pick like beach vacations when we can get away. But like, as far as like, if I was going to do a city getaway, like Tokyo just seems so different to a lot of other places I've ever been to that it would just be a cool experience, I think. And I've heard a lot of good things. Still has a Formula One track there, don't they? I'll have to have a look how far Suzuka is from Tokyo.
Fair enough. And also, everyone knows you're obviously, from what we talked about earlier, you're quite the car nut. You're very invested in racing and automobiles in general, and you also have a great appreciation of history, including history of vehicles, history of racing. So, and I know it's a difficult question to put you on the spot with, but what would your one dream car be to own?
Oh no.
Just one. No price.
Does it have to work?
I mean, I know that's what you're used to for some years, but let's assume it works. I know that's half the criteria for you.
No, but I mean, like, do I have to also deal with the fact that, like, if I pick some cars, I know that they're just not going to turn on half the time?
That's okay.
Like, are we assuming 100% reliability? I think if I could pick any car, but I had to use it as my daily driver, that would be a different answer. It'd be like an Audi R8 or something, because it's all-wheel drive and it would work.
That's but I think your favorite car when you're going to drive on the roads of France, on the back roads.
It have to be like, you remember like the late 80s like Porsche 911 turbos, they're air cooled and stuff, and they have the huge spoiler on the back.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Something like that. That'd be a lot of fun.
Right, yeah, that's fair.
I'd go with that.
Here's an interesting question we got. What's a word that's used in England that should be used more in America? For example, like a biscuit in England is a cookie in America. And don't pull the football soccer card thing.
I mean, I can't say anything rude, can I?
You got to watch yourself there. But there's got to be some words you miss saying that just aren't used here that you kind of wish they'd be used more.
Kerfuffle.
I like it. We'll make a concerted effort to bring that into more conversations and maybe some of our blogs in the future.
Yeah. Throw kerfuffle in there, and I'll appreciate it.
Fair enough. Got three real quick questions before we wrap up. These are basically one-word answers. Ford or Ferrari?
Wow, I mean,
one-word answers.
Ferrari. It's not even a question. Like, we could get. You can't have a one-word answer to this.
I'm just. It's gonna have to take in all that you know about them both, and I know you're thinking it's high end. Regardless of the kind of view. I didn't know maybe you're a Mustang guy. Or something. Who knows?
It's nothing to do with that. It's the fact that I mean, I'm sure you've seen the movie, but like, there's a whole extra story behind that. Like,
sure. I get that.
I mean, that car was not really that much of a Ford. It was built in like Croydon or Essex or something like that in England, and shipped over. I mean, it's not even a Ford. It's fine.
All right.
Move on.
Okay, we'll leave Ferrari. Clearly, this is emotional. I hit a nerve there. But we'll stick with Ferrari. This one might be easier. Cats or dogs?
That's not easier. I've got both, and they.
Right. You gotta have a favorite. Everybody has one.
I mean, yeah, I'd have to say dog now. I grew up with cats, but we just got our second. As you know, we just got our second dog, little puppy, and he's absolute nightmare. I wish I could give him back, but he's part of the family.
Well, that's the final question. Do you think the new puppy will grow up to weigh more than you?
I'm going to ride him to work. That's good.
I think that's a hard yes.
That's my way of saving the environment. I ride my dog to work.
All right. Well, that's great. That's all we've got for the lightning round, Pete. You survived some, nice job. I know you didn't have any idea what was going to go on there. So thanks for being a good sport about these lightning round questions. And honestly, just thanks for joining me today.
No worries. Thank you very much, Dave.
Well, that wraps up this episode of Network Connections presented by Siemon. Thanks for listening, and thank you again, Pete, for joining me. Make sure you subscribe to the Siemon Company YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. Future episodes will continue to feature Siemon experts that will deliver expert insight into the ICT industry. From all of us here at the Siemon Company, we hope you and your family are staying healthy and safe. See you next time.